Hello. I was the one who needed to admit people. Hang on, you're on mute. I was waiting. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Actually, so the link in the Zoom was it was a registration link, so I had to register. So Carrie's waiting too. If you want to pull her in, if we want to chat before, not a big deal. It's just I think we were stuck with everybody waiting to participate.
And it's funny, I didn't want to click the start the webinar because I didn't want to let everyone in. So we have two folks who might be able to hear us who are here very early. So welcome if you are here and can hear us. Carrie, I'm so sorry. I was the holdup. I thought I didn't want to start the webinar yet. And so I didn't let you all in apparently either. So,
No worries. Yeah, I was here a minute ago and I could hear you all, but I didn't see my video. So the other people that are joining are probably sitting in the void as well. So hello.
and so but you could hear us. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I could hear and see you, but my video wasn't there.
It's just I don't know why every time it seems a little bit different, but
It's just to keep things fun and fresh and exciting, you know. It's
how are
never
you
dull,
both?
Allison.
That's right. Good
Good.
morning. Um,
Yes, good
aloha.
morning.
Oh, and we can see you all in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us from India. My goodness, that's wonderful. Amazing. So we're going to talk logistics. So if you all want to go get a cup of coffee or something or tea before joining. Let's see. I think the only thing that I did was I took the bios that were from the website with your book. So if there's anything that you want to edit in there, that's also in our docs. But I thought I would just heat check those. Carrie, I'm going to do my best to pronounce the college.
Oh, do you want me to say it for you?
I do, but I
It's
also was like, maybe this is a great chance to scaffold learning a language and like even pronouncing new words.
it's two parts. So
Okay.
it's Kapi'olani.
P. Olani?
Olani.
Kapi'olani.
Okay. Kapi Olani.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. It is actually some pronunciation is terrifying to me. I'll often say pronunciation, and it literally is like, okay, that's
Well,
great.
you know, as a language teacher, I always say that pronunciation is often the least important part of language. It's clarity. Can we understand you? Do we know what you're saying? And so,
Okay,
as
that's
long as
really,
you're close enough, we're good.
I'll try to remember that when I'm really just, why are people not understanding? Uh, and my dad is going to join. He was so funny. He's never joined one of these, and out of the blue, he's like, I
Wow.
heard you're doing a webinar and I think I signed up. So anyway, I'm so happy this is the one he's chosen to try to see.
I love that.
You know, Carrie, we should have had your mother join because Carrie's mother has been waiting for us to write a second book. I cannot
It's
believe we
true.
didn't meet her.
Do you want to quickly
We
invite
should
her?
have.
Come right now.
You should invite her.
I know we should have. Oh my goodness, she is. She also tells everybody about the book. She's a pretty solid cheerleader.
So fun. Do you all have any upcoming travel for it or UDL?
We are actually going to Barcelona we have a poster on the website we created kind of as our book 2.0. Actually, before I forget, Allison, on our notes, I put the URL and a flyer
I
that you
see
can give to the
those.
participants. And the flyer is a PDF so if you put that link in the chat box, they can see the flyer, and you can also put the link to the website when we discuss it.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that
Thank you.
website Carrie and I put together in 2022. We both happened to have sabbaticals the same year. So it was kind of our book 2.0 because we've been talking about another book, updating the book, and we were like, let's just make a website because it can be so much more multimodal. So, but
That's true.
to answer your question more directly, yes, we are going to present it at Ed Media in Barcelona in May.
Were you all there last year as well or earlier? Have you been there? I don't know why you saying that. I thought for some reason I had you maybe there before. Okay.
We
Amazing.
were at Ed Media in 2018,
19 in Amsterdam.
2019. Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
that one we did the book. We presented the book there.
Yes. Yeah.
We even took it to the IB organization, which is in the Netherlands. And yeah, it was, yeah.
So which direction did you fly? Did you fly across the US or did you fly? Okay.
We both flew
I
different
flew to
directions.
Japan.
Okay, okay. And then hopped over from there. It's a big
Yeah.
hop.
Yeah, because Japan is actually closer for us than the East Coast. Japan's like a 7-hour nonstop from here.
Amazing. That
Yeah.
actually, so that's like flying across the continental US. Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
And it's
great.
not a bad place to, take a little few day stop.
That's, I would join. I would. So, and have you been to Barcelona before?
I have, yes.
I have
I love it. I love that city. I was only there for a few days and there's so much to do.
I love that city too. My sister lived there for a little while, so I've been a handful of times. So I'm super excited to go back.
Amazing. You can do part of your presentation from the what is the Gaudi's Park with all the
Yes, yes. I already told Kavita we're for sure going to that park.
amazing. It is so unique. I mean, there's nothing like it anywhere I've been. It's incredible. And for those of you who are just joining, we're just doing a little side conversation and then we will let everyone in the chat more, but thank you for yeah, saying hello if you would like, and you can let us know where you're zooming in from. And we're already hearing some folks from India, from New York City are here already. So it is so great to have you all.
And Allison, thank you so much for not doing this at our 6 a.m. because it took like to
Yes.
make sure I was at work by 9 a.m. was a feat because of traffic. Our rush hour traffic can be bad. So I was sweating it today, making sure I'm here.
I mean, I was laughing in our conversation when you're like, yeah, 9 might be a little early too. That is amazing. No, it's all good. And I have had my second cup of coffee just to keep going through the afternoon. So wherever you are in if caffeine is your thing, your caffeine intake. Are you both coffee drinkers?
Yes.
Yep. Just finished mine.
I actually got a mug from when I was there from that restaurant called Goofy's. It's a
Oh yeah.
amazing breakfast. Absolutely amazing breakfast.
I live super close to there.
We'll have to go back again.
Definitely. Next time you come.
Yes, yes, yes. And we're hearing someone's from Bolivia, Galway, Ireland. This is amazing. So talk about what time zone is a good time zone? I mean, it's just so I'm trying to think. Ireland is 5 hours from me. You all are 5 hours. So there's a 10-hour gap right there. So welcome everyone. This is just awesome. It's past midnight in
Oh my God.
Bangalore.
Wow.
Thank
Thank you
you
for
for
being
Thanks
here.
for staying up.
I knew India is 15 and a half hours ahead of Hawaii. So I was like, it's gotta be late.
We hope you're all cozy in a nice blanket and well, we have 5 minutes till we kick off. And as folks are attending, sometimes I like to just as sort of a back conversation. Oh, I love, she goes, dedicated. Fortunately, you are. Just ask, are either of you reading any good books these days or anything that's, something that has maybe impacted your thinking or that you might put in your next book?
I just read an amazing book called Whiskey Tender by Deborah Jackson Taffa. And
Okay.
it was like so eye-opening to me. She's a Native American author. And it was it's her memoir, I guess. It is her own story, but just really eye-opening to me. So if any of your readers, highly recommend Whiskey Tender.
Amazing. I haven't heard of that, but I will check that out.
It was a National Book Award finalist I think maybe last year or the year before. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. How about you, Carrie?
I just finished a book called This is Paradise, and it was a collection of short stories by a local author here. And it's beautifully, beautifully written, and it's a really interesting window into sort of the other side of what tourists typically see when they come to Hawaii. So it was a really, really engaging and very well written book. So that was really interesting. And I think, I feel like everything I read influences my work in some way because it gives you another window into perspectives and things to consider. And also, I'm always trying to think of how to bring stories into my teaching. So that's another piece there. I'm about to pass that one over to Kavita too.
Oh, I love it. I
That's
love
right,
it.
giving me that copy. Allison, what are you reading?
I just read an interesting book called The Neuroscience of Grief and really presented the idea that grief is a form of learning. And it was really interesting to think about grief in that way. It talked about it in terms of time, space, and location. So almost like I miss you because at 6 o'clock p.m. I'm used to this thing happening and I know where you are at that point, and it's this space and the kind of the unlearning and then the relearning that has to shift for all of those things. It's been really interesting. I'm forgetting the author right now, but yeah, it's interesting.
It sounds super interesting. I just wrote that down. I'm going to check that out.
I know I have yours written down.
Yeah. We should just form a book club.
I know. And if any of you listening here early want to share some of your, and I think we should meet on the beach again for the book club discussion.
Yes, I love that. Yeah,
Awesome.
if you have any good books you want to put in the chat.
Yeah.
Welcome to those of you just joining. We'll get started in a couple minutes. If you want to put where you're from in the chat, and if you're ready reading any interesting books, we would love to. We're just chatting about books that we're reading these days. And we're recognizing we have folks here from all over the world already, up to a 15-hour time zone difference. San Antonio, welcome. Oklahoma.
Oh, wow, joining with her class. Cool.
I just saw a book recommendation from Sangeeta, Out of My Heart by Sharon Draper, if everybody wants to write that down.
Excellent. Quite a few folks from Oklahoma, Portugal, Kansas with an exclamation point. I love it. Missouri, Oregon, Derry, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. We have lots of states of the US represented, Denver, Colorado. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in a minute. Someone from Pakistan, welcome. It must be late at night there. Wonderful. Well, it is 3 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States where I am, and I know that you all are joining us from all around the world. So whether you're having your morning cup of coffee or tea, or you are trying to stay awake at midnight, welcome. Aloha. I am so honored to be here today. I'm Allison Posey, and one of the gifts that I have as in my job is getting to host these stories. This is our third episode of UDL Stories from the Field. And today I'm joined with just two remarkable educators. I'm so proud to get to call them my friends as well, but they are leading the work in universal design for learning and language learners. Caroline Torres and Kavita Rao. I actually got to visit them in Hawaii, where Carrie teaches second language teaching to pre-service and in-service teachers. Okay, I'm gonna say it here, Carrie, from Kaupi Olahini. Is that close? Okay. Community college. And she provides professional development to teachers working with culturally and linguistically diverse students. She's worked in schools all around the Hawaiian Islands and in Japan. So welcome, Carrie. So happy you're here today. And Kavita,
Thank you.
Rao is a professor of special education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Did I say that one correctly? Thank you. Okay, and is director of the College of Education Research Institute. I will say, whenever I need any sort of research, I go to Kavita first. I really trust so much of what you share. Her research focuses on instructional and assistive technologies, universal design for learning, online learning and technology for culturally and linguistically diverse students. Both have just made significant contributions to UDL, both in terms of research, but I also want to note the application. It's sometimes really hard to convey the application of UDL, especially in a format like a book that can feel limited in its means, but they have done that. And one of my favorite quotes from their book, I got the chance to read it for the second time today, or the second time recently, and there's this quote that really resonates, and it's, when language and language development are integrated into content area lessons and classes, rather than taught as separate language lessons, learners have added context to facilitate their development of language skills, and language learning becomes more powerful and meaningful. So I really want to emphasize this sentence, it's easy to kind of skip past it, but this importance of the context to facilitate the development of these skills is something that's just really brought to life in their book in a way that, again, is just very unique and is very, I think, important to the field. And I also want to note that in this book is the UDL design cycle, which was influential for me in my early learning about UDL, and it really grounds the organization and the lesson planning throughout the book. So it's absolutely wonderful. And I know you don't want to hear me, so I'm thrilled to get to now introduce Kavita and Carrie into the conversation. Thank you both so much for being here today. And Kavita, I just thought maybe you could kick us off today and share what's an example of learning from your experience that has stood out to you recently?
Okay, so you gave the perfect quote from our book about context, because I'm going to tell you a UDL story about context and how context matters and how it can be translated by a teacher and applied in the classroom. So I'm telling you a story that actually happened about 20 years ago. I was working in the classrooms on the neighbor islands of Hawaii. So they're rural communities, and there are lots of migrant workers and students who are language learners in their classrooms. And I was in the classroom of a very inspired and inspiring ELL teacher. And she did things that were very creative. And this was, remember that these were kind of the technology wasn't where it is today. So using technology was kind of a bigger deal 20 years ago than it is now. But she was very creative about giving students different and ways to express themselves, multimodal opportunities. So my story is grounded in something that she did. She was teaching students about people's biographies. They were reading biographies of, this is the middle school students, about biographies. But to have them understand what a biography really is, she made the personal connection. She wanted to build background and make it relevant. So she had the students explore something about themselves, their heritage, and she started with what is the meaning of your name? Like, who gave you your name? What is your name? So the students were exploring their names and then connecting it to heritage, if relevant. Not every student needed to correct it to heritage, but that was her launching point. Like, what does your name mean? Where does it come from? And if some students may not be connected to their name, so she said, or what would your name be if you had to pick a name? So she made it very flexible so students could engage with that. Her language learners could engage with that. And there was one student in this class, her name is Julia. And I remember this child from 20 years ago. She loved being in school. She was social. She loved being there. She wanted friends. She wanted to engage. But with her language learning, it was where she was with her language learning, she wasn't quick to jump in to speak because she didn't quite have the expressive language to jump in. So sometimes she was quieter than she really wanted to be because she couldn't quickly engage in conversation. She also had been in a car accident the year before, and so she lost some school time. She had a traumatic brain injury that was creating some cognitive challenges. She was recovering, but along with language learning, she had some cognitive processing issues. So Julia is in this classroom wanting to be a part of it, but maybe not shining as she could because of her struggles. So this particular your name assignment, she went back home and she got a picture of her grandma she was named after. So she brought that into the classroom to talk about her name, and the teacher was encouraged her to take a photo of the photo. This was before we had so much digital stuff. She took a photo of the photo and put that into PowerPoint at the time. And she had Julia write the name, and this is my grandma, and just simple sentences so Julia could generate some information. But the cool thing that happened was Julia kept going with it. She found a picture of grandma and grandpa when they first got married in front of their house in Michoacan. She brought that in, and they built out this PowerPoint that she worked with the teacher. She expressed herself. She said more about where she's from, what she loved about Mexico, where she's from. And then she continued to talk about what she loved about the place that they had moved to. And so this just became a form of expression for her where she could finally express herself. It gave her entry points to express herself. And she ended that little PowerPoint presentation she made. It was maybe 6 or 7 slides. There was a picture of a honu, which is a Hawaiian turtle, which is very special to Hawaii. And so it was even like situating her in her new space and place. And I think she put a big smiley face on their turtle. This is how happy she was about being able to express herself and who she was. So I tell this story, and I think I sometimes tell this to my students in my classes, and people think, oh, multiple means of expression. You gave her a different way to express herself. Absolutely. So this was wonderful because she was able to construct what she wanted to say using the technology, photos, captions, chunk it down, all these things that we know language learners can benefit from. But I also just want to highlight something that Carrie and I are passionate about. We are real process people, and we think of UDL as a process of intentional design. And I think there were so many processes behind what happened here, and I just want to pull a few out in this story. So some of the processes were that the teacher was building background for all the students by doing the what's your name assignment. That was wonderful. She was giving them a connection. She was making biographies authentic and relevant to students, which is a big part of UDL and the engagement piece. And then Julia's project also shows it goes further. She got to it was welcoming her identity into the classroom, which is one of the new 3.0 UDL guidelines was addressed in there. And it also really helps Julia with things like self-regulation, like chunking how to make this assignment. And she was able to connect with the teacher who cared about her and get feedback as she went. So that was really important for her too. And it also helped her organize. So in terms of the cognitive processing, it gave her a way to organize. So the beauty of this was that there was so much UDL going on. There were so many UDL guidelines being hit in this. And a lot of it was the process of how it allowed Julia to engage with the task at hand. So that's my UDL story to start off this webinar.
Well, there's so much we could unpack there. I mean, I almost want to say pause, get the recording, because so much of what you shared we might think of as, well, those are just best instructional practices, but the way they were so intentionally put together to really meet the needs of this one student, but then it ended up, it sounds like, creating this culture in the classroom that really invited students where they were. And I was always described as shy as a child. I mean, just it was painful for me to have to say anything. So this description you have of this student who wanted to be there and but just didn't quite know how, I think that's quite common in the classrooms. And when we think of how often, we think of just who raises their hand quickest and who's there saying the most, I think there's so much to think about just in terms of that comfort and that cognitive processing piece that's so important. There are lots of comments coming through in the chat. So welcome to those of you who have shared, again, more places from around the world, and there are some close by you there as well. And please, we invite you to put your comments and questions in the chat as we go through today. We'll have time at the end for a little Q&A, but if you have any questions or thoughts, as Kavita was sharing her story, what's resonating, what do you wonder? We're happy to make this a conversation with you. So as we go along, your questions are able to be addressed or your thoughts considered. So this brings, thinking about stories from classrooms, then this process of integrating UDL. Carrie, I know we've talked about, what might be next in your book. Do you have any thoughts that you would like to add in terms of maybe where you were or a story of the first book, and then something that's maybe percolating in your mind a little bit that could go into the next iteration of the book.
Of course. I want to add something to Kavita's story too, before we move on, because I think something that comes up for me a lot when I implement UDL in my classes, and I do now in all of my classes, is what you mentioned, how you are also shy and sometimes, had a hard time interacting. Something that I have noticed a lot is I maybe have one student in mind who really needs some extra support, who I really need to engage and ensure that we have something that's more relevant and honoring the student's culture and providing some specific scaffolding. And then I often find out that there was a different student who really, really benefited by this different approach, or by having these options or these multiple modalities, that wasn't on my radar as really needing that much extra help. So, maybe in Julia's classroom, there was also a shy Allison who really thrived in that project, but hadn't been on the radar as somebody who was necessarily visibly struggling or visibly in need of support. And so that's one of the things that I have really loved about Universal Design for Learning, is that I often have people in my class come up to me and say, oh, that particular assignment or that option or this way of doing something was so helpful for me because I've really struggled. And I thought, wow, I hadn't realized that this person was struggling. So I think that is one of the beautiful things about UDL, is that when we build in these really intentional strategic supports, it really is something that brings everybody in. The second thing I was going to say about
No, that's beautifully shared. And I imagine many of you, as you were listening to these examples, thought, oh, that makes me think of. And if you didn't think of you maybe thought of someone else. So someone put in the chat, those invisible pieces that we don't always see as educators, but are real and really do impact the learning and the contributions that we may miss if we don't think of the other ways. Amazing, amazing.
I will also add a side story. I've actually taken Kavita's initial assignment and adapted it, and I use it with the teachers in my classes, and I have them actually do that activity themselves and think about how they can implement it in their classes. And I think when we go through the process ourselves, we see how we can implement it and kind of connect. But going back to your question, before I stray too far off track,
We can go off track. It's all good.
Careful. I just might. Something that you asked about, what are we thinking about now? And as we have looked back on the book so many years later, I think this piece of cultural relevance and culturally sustaining pedagogy, and this element of really ensuring that we are honoring and centering students' identities and what is relevant to students, is something that Kavita and I are really passionate about. And in hindsight, I think if we were to write the book again, we would be more explicit about the importance of really layering and aligning those frameworks, because they really do work hand in hand. And I think we included that in the book, but maybe not as explicitly as we would today. I think today we would probably try to make that a lot more explicit and give more examples. Something else that Kavita and I were really talking about over the past few years is, when we're looking at this relevance and culturally sustaining pedagogy too, is also bringing joy into the lessons, trying to make our instruction and our content joyful. And that's another way to draw in students.
so important. I remember hearing some teachers one time at a PD, since you both do PDs, and they were laughing at, having a good time together. And they paused and said, if students were doing what we're doing in a classroom, we would probably go over and kind of reprimand them for being a little disruptive. So this thought that, there's a certain way that you need to be in school that maybe is a little quieter, is a little not expressive of some of the different ways that you are, is, I think, something important for us to continue to think about. And again, a thing that might be invisible to us as educators that we don't recognize is there until we provide just a subtle design shift and we're able to really get a different side of that learner there. I will add two other things just that have come up in the chat. So the book is UDL for language learners, and we'll give you a discount code at the end. It has examples from every subject matter. You might think, oh, this is going to focus on reading. It doesn't. It has math, it has science. And what I think you'll really start to appreciate, and for those of you, I know many of you have said, I've read this book and you're ready for book number 2. The process that is in this book is repeated, and you all can use this for whatever lesson, whatever learning experience you're thinking about. It truly is there for all learners. So I will emphasize that. And to be able to think about having additional insights into the layering of these different frameworks will be really interesting. Are there any quick tips that you might have for these? I know this is a short webinar conversation, but are there any tips that you might have for us in terms of incorporating culturally relevant pedagogy, layering that in with UDL? Actually, Kavita, I'll turn this one to you first, if that's all right.
Sure. So, it's so interesting because culturally relevant pedagogy is a framework in itself of different things that you can do. And many of the strategies that are culturally relevant and culturally sustaining pedagogies are very consistent with what you do for UDL. So I think, again, going back to the process thing that Carrie and I just love, it's the process of thinking about where are you reducing barriers. So it can be a UDL strategy, culturally relevant pedagogy strategies, which are very similar. So you can use strategies from across so many frameworks within the UDL process approach. And I think Carrie and I always emphasize when we're doing professional development or teaching teachers or working with students that you think about your lesson or your curriculum, and then think about where are the barriers in that curriculum, not in the student, but where are things within that curriculum that could be a challenge for people. But also the part that I think is really important, again, what we would emphasize in the book is think about where you can bring in students' strengths in that activity that you're doing. Like, is there a space here where we can bring strengths in? So look at the assets-based piece as well as reducing barriers, and then plan out the activity. And not every lesson or activity might have an opportunity for that. We're not saying you have to find it everywhere, but if you can, as you're teaching, if you can start thinking about where an activity, where can this strength shine? Sometimes with language learners, they actually have a lot of knowledge just from knowing multiple languages. They might know their home language or languages. Many students have more than one language when they come in. They may have a lot of resiliency from things in their lives. They've often moved as children into a different country, and sometimes that means you have really good observation skills. You have really good skills of like learning how to fit in or not. But I think all of those things can be brought into activity. So again, culturally relevant and culturally sustaining pedagogies are a frame with many things you can do, and they are completely aligned to bringing it into the UDL process. Yeah.
And it makes me think, if I were to imagine right now in our conversation, if we were hosting this in a second language, would I be translating in my head and composing the thoughts and then generating them, it's actually using so much more cognitive energy. So it's not that students are less abled in any way. It truly is there are so many steps that are going on neurologically. And when we think of the cognitive load, the cognitive demand of that, it almost requires, I mean, I need it just doing one language. I need to have multiple things to help me remember what's happening in the conversation, keep track of the important details, especially when so much of our instruction is delivered verbally and fairly quickly. So I know you had noted the processing at the beginning. So I just want to emphasize the importance of thinking about where can those strengths shine. I love the way you frame that, Kavita. Where can the strengths shine? And how can we bring those out so that it really does enable the learning? We know that learning is first and foremost emotional. So when emotions are in a good place, Carrie, what are your thoughts in terms of the layering of different frameworks together with UDL?
I have so many thoughts. I want to speak to what you just mentioned as well. You're absolutely right. The cognitive load of just operating in a second language is really sometimes really, really intense. And so I think you almost can't chunk things down enough. And so thinking about these different modalities and providing, text when there's verbal information or visuals, or having those supplements to help support that process, and also giving wait time. It's such a simple thing, but language learners just need more time to process. If you just keep going, you're going to lose them and then they'll check out typically. But if you pause and chunk things, you're more likely to be able to keep them engaged. A quick tip, I think, for including culturally relevant, culturally sustaining instruction is get to know your students. The better you know your students, the easier and the better able you will be to bring in things that are relevant and things that they connect with. And now if you teach in secondary and you have 120 students, you may be thinking, how do I get to know all of my students? And my quick tip for that is do assignments like Kavita's All About Me activity. Have students, I did a writing class, I had students do an autobiography. And we worked up to the autobiography by doing a visual timeline of turning points, doing a poem about ourselves, doing different types of writing activities. We created a postcard of a place that was special to us. And all of these are academic activities. These are all learning opportunities. They are all language building opportunities. They are all engaging to the students because it is about them and things they care about. And in each and every one of those assignments, I learn more and more about my students. And with each of those, I get better at then tailoring my instruction and bringing in pieces that are more engaging or more interesting. And I start to learn, okay, who really thrives in this modality and who does better in this modality? And so not just the content, I can start to adjust and provide different opportunities in approaches based on what I'm learning about my students. So that's kind of my trick. You can start at the beginning with a baseline of things sort of related generally to identity and personal reflection, because that is more general. But then as you get to know the students through infusing these types of assignments, they also become, to me, so much more enjoyable to read and give feedback on than really static, read and respond kind of assignments. So that's sort of my tip for how to work that in without it being so much more time consuming.
And there's a tricky, there's a very interesting piece to wrestle with. Again, part of why teaching and learning is so hard, but there's always variability, as someone noted in the chat, of trauma. So as you invite in personal experiences into the classroom, how do you also ensure that it's not triggering something that could be too much for a student to know?
Actually, that's such an important question. I'm glad that you raised that. I'm glad that people are thinking of that. I think as we create these kinds of assignments, we want to be really careful about what we are asking students to share. I think we also want to be really explicit that I'm asking you to share something that you're comfortable with me reading. And if it's something that is going to be shared amongst the class, I think you absolutely need to tell the students ahead of time. You're going to write something that you're comfortable with your classmates sharing. And I think you tailor it in a way that we're not asking students about you know, when you experienced bullying, or I think it's more aligned with things that students are interested in, turning points where they felt growth or turning points where they connected with something. And I think being really intentional in that design and in our instruction to students, that you only need to tell me what you are comfortable with me reading. And that's going to vary depending on your students' levels, how you present that. But I'm really happy that people are thinking about that, because it is something to be very cautious about. We don't want to ask students to bare their souls in an environment where we don't have trained counselors or people who can provide the support needed for students to experience or talk about certain kinds of things. Yeah, thank you for that question. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, and same, carrying on what Carrie said, and giving options and choices. For example, the name example, one of the things that the teacher wanted to do was have students connect with their heritage, if their name meant something in their languages, but also recognizing that some students may not have a connection for various reasons. They may, you know, their families might have been disrupted, or they may not even know family members, or they may be from a place but never have lived there themselves because their families were migrating. So being careful to make that assignment broad enough to say, what is the history of your name, or what is a name you would make up? So again, letting them out of that if they want to go some other direction with it. So thinking of things as broader. And the other, I think, important thing is not to assume that every child is connected to the culture or heritage that they come from in the same way. So if those, I think we do a lot of connecting students to their cultures, which is lovely and wonderful. But whenever we give those assignments, to also give other options and examples of, if you want to talk about how you connect to where you are now or where you more recently came from. Because I know I was a child, I came from India when I was 9 to the US. And I would make up answers because I didn't like the prompt that the teacher gave me. And I would just make up a story because the teacher didn't know didn't know the truth. So that's how I dealt with the fact that I'm like, I don't have an answer to this question. The teacher thinks they're being really culturally sensitive, but I'm just making a story. So I think just having variations for students to tap in, not assuming that just because they're a language learner, they may not even know their first language. They may know another language because of their migration situation or whatever. So yeah, so just remembering, I think the big thing, just giving options and choices and making sure that we don't pigeonhole people into our idea of who they are.
And I appreciate so much in your book. One of the really critical steps is to know the goal. So if the goal is to get to know students a little more, there can be some flexibility in there. If the goal is for students to express themselves, there can be a little flexibility in there. So it really truly does always go back to the goal that you have, whether it's, you know, a math problem, doing a science lab report, having a discussion in a class. Keep keep that goal at the center, and then really think about inviting these different ways in. That really truly is part of the process and goes back to identifying the barriers in the environment, the strengths of the student, to think about how that might be done. So we have one more minute to go. So I just am wondering, in terms of next steps for each of you, do you have anything exciting coming up, either related to your books or maybe professional development trainings that you might be doing? Where can we find you in the world?
I'll jump in. One thing that Carrie and I did, we've been talking about writing another book for years, and no, we don't have the time. So we were fortunate enough in 2022 to have a little space because we were both on sabbatical, and we kind of did a book 2.0, but we made it a website. And the reason we chose to make a website, we took things that we had put in the book and we used the website to make it more multimodal, so you can see examples of it. So for those of you who are interested, the book gives a lot of background on how to design, which is so to really go through how do you intentionally design using the UDL design cycle. And our website shows examples of what can be done. And on the website, we also added the asset-based pedagogy and culturally relevant piece. So Allison, yeah, Al, thank you for putting the website link into the chat box. And so that's kind of where we've been going with our work since then. And Carrie, I'll let you jump in and add on to that.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at right now. And of course, both teaching about UDL. And I think one thing that we really added into the website that we also would have focused more on in the book was really focusing on asset-based pedagogy, because I think that shift to really ensuring that we're situating the barriers in the curriculum and the instruction and not the student, I think because of how teacher education is set up, it is a harder shift to actually internalize than it is to understand intellectually. And so that's something that we tried to really bring to the forefront in there, and ensuring that we're really identifying those barriers in the curriculum and looking at our students through this asset-based lens, and what are their strengths, what are their interests, and how do we draw them in. And I think if teachers can make that shift, that actually makes so much difference. It's almost more important than any strategy. So you'll find more about that on the website as well.
So I just can't even tell you, they give you so many resources, so many ideas, and it is the way that I feel like I want to be as an educator. So thank you for raising that to us all. And I do want to, I forgot, Kavita, to congratulate you again on being the 2024 UDL Award receiver. And we hope we're able to see many of you at the 2025 UDL conference that's coming up in Washington, D.C. Thank you both for your important work. There are learners all around the globe who really need this kind of instruction. So I appreciate all that you're doing, and I appreciate all of you for joining today and really brainstorming how we can do this together. Have a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you are.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining at all these different times. And thank you, Allison.
Thank you both.